team and the school committee?
I do not
Any
have a
particular
gavel,
people
but
who have
I'll
been
call the
instrumental
meeting to order.
in making this, who put this together?
Oh, it's all Lisa and her team. I mean,
The superintendent and her
people
team?
Good
reached
evening,
out and said,
Danvers. I'm Dr. Joko, Chair of the Danvers Human Rights and Inclusion Committee. Welcome to our Human Rights and Inclusion Committee of December 16, 2021. The agenda was posted, and we will start by going to something we started a few meetings ago, which is the reading of the Native Land Acknowledgement. And that will be done by committee member Bob Dana.
We acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the unceded territory of the Namkeg people. Historical evidence shows that the Namkeg were peaceful in their relationship with European settlers. However, their population depleted rapidly due to the Europeans' introduction of smallpox. As we begin our meeting, we acknowledge and honor the Namkeg community, who were the original inhabitants of what is now known as Danvers, Massachusetts. Let us take a moment to honor these ancestral grounds that we are collectively gathered up and support the resilience and strength that Indigenous people have shown worldwide.
Thank you, Bob. We will now move on. The third item on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes from November 18, 2021. The minutes were not sent out, so I will be tabling that, and we will take that on at our January meeting. The fourth item on the agenda will be citizen queries. This is something also new that we're starting. If there's any resident who has a question or comments, this is the moment. You just raise your hand and you'll go to the microphone. Yes. And if you want to just get to the microphone and introduce yourself.
Hi everybody, my name is Lisa Silva and I'm a Danvers resident. I have 2 children in the school system and I'm a town meeting member and a member of the NAACP, North Shore branch. I just wanted to take this time, first of all, to thank you for doing this citizens query where the community can kind of have a voice and make suggestions and ask questions. I came last month and I thought it was really powerful when residents got up and spoke. And I think that, during this time, that's something that we really need to do is come together as a community and focus on community. And I think this is a great platform to do that. So I just wanted to say thank you. But I also do have a suggestion as well. And it's about last month's meeting. I'm just wondering if maybe you could send out some kind of survey to the people who did speak, because I think, Dee, that you pointed out at the vigil, a lot of people that came up and spoke, and a lot of us aren't comfortable, I'm not really that comfortable right now, speaking in front of a crowd. But there seemed to be other reasons why people weren't getting up and speaking. And I think if we kind of get to that reason, we'll have a really good chance at solving some of the problems that we're seeing happening today. So I won't bore everybody in detail, but I came up with a few different things that I could share with you, through email or whatever. But I think just kind of asking people what has kept you from speaking in the past, and why did so many people get up and share their stories that day? Because I do think it was really powerful. And that's about it. So,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Anybody else? None? Thank you very much, Lisa. I'll now move on to the fifth item on the agenda, which is an update from our police chief, Chief Lover.
Thank you for giving me time to speak tonight. During the last meeting, we had a discussion about future events that the Human Rights Inclusion Committee want to present and how there's been some burdens as far as financing it. Back in November, the police department in Danvers took part of the No Shave November as part of a home-based program, which provides services for veterans who suffer from PTSD and traumatic brain injuries. At the end of the month, the officers who participated came to me and asked if there's a way they could keep their beards and facial hair through the month of December. And I said, I'd be willing to continue it through January 1st if officers were interested in making a donation to a local charity. So what I decided to do was, officers who wish to participate can make a donation, and I'd like to briefly just give you a quick look tonight at the donation from the Danvers Police Department to be used to help further your programs and your mission that we support you in and try to be partners with you with. So I'd like to present this to you if I could.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief. Thank you.
So yeah,
Thank you very much. Thank you. And just so you know, we do have a standing police liaison update on the agenda, and that will be presented by Lieutenant Rob Sullivan, who is our police liaison, in case you had any questions. I'll now move on to the sixth item on the agenda, which is the student liaison update. Do we have our students here today? There we go. Perfect. The floor is yours. You want to just go to the microphone, introduce yourself.
Hello, thank you for having us here again. My name is Milena. I'm a senior at Danvers High School, and though I don't have too much to say, I think one of the biggest things that I would like to bring as an update is that we're bringing the Anti-Discrimination Club is back and running. We started with our first meeting last Monday, and we'll have meetings every other Monday, and that's going to work very hard to get a lot of student input in what students can do in the school to make it a safer environment, and we're hoping to work with the other clubs in the school to also further that idea to get the students' voices, get people involved. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi everyone. I just want to say that these couple of things are really hard for everyone. But I just want to say that a lot of students would speak up only for to authority figure because of what will happen after. Sometimes when you report to someone, people call you a snitch, or most of the time you get bullied for telling the truth or speaking up.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the update. Yes, Lisa?
I just had one question for you, Melina. I'm so excited that the club is back and running. I guess if there's any way that we can support you, if we can get involved, if you have events or anything else, if you can bring that and let us know. We really want to get more involved with your group if we can. So just let us know.
Definitely, us too. I think we love that. I think that's a part of the proposal. So thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
And do you have any idea how many students so far have signed up?
Not as of right now. I personally was unable to make it to the first meeting. However, I was in very close contact. I was actually one of the few who approached to get it back up and running after the recent events in the school. And though I wasn't able to approach and be there for that first one, I will be there for the future ones. And I know that we did have a good turnout.
So the club has a Google Classroom that has over 40 students that have joined
that's
the Google
great.
Classroom as well. So we're excited about that.
That's great. Yes, Paul?
Adam, do you have representation from the freshman class all the way up to the senior class?
We have a good, diverse representation of the school. And just to build on, I think what Jay spoke about, we're working with our clubs right now to develop an anonymous reporting form. And we're almost done with that. We're going to have that done and rolled out to students back before winter break. So that's been something that we're excited to work with the students around. And they've had some really good feedback as to how to make reporting feel safer and more effective. So we're excited about that.
Who would that reporting go to?
Now it comes to the administration. it would go through, it could be given to any adult in the building, and then it would come to us so that we could investigate what was reported.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, speak.
I'm moving back once to the citizens' first comment. I think we have to look at it as a committee. Now, right now, this is just a suggestion, but I think it's worthy of coming up with some type of a survey with other groups in town, or specifically the schools, parents, law enforcement, anybody, and try to get a feedback as to what the feeling is regarding some of the issues that we're facing and how we move forward. Because I know that I said this the last meeting, it's a long haul. It's a long haul. Sometimes that's not good because we can't wait forever to get things done. So it's maybe more immediate. If we don't get moving on it right away, with some real positive feedback and what has to be done to help this town, and we're just going to be on a stagnant parallel for years to come, which isn't going to solve anything. We're just going to be sitting right back here 5, 10 years from now. So I would suggest that the committee step forward at some point immediately between now and, I guess, after Martin Luther King, and then move forward on it. Thank you.
I will now move on to the, I lost my numbers here. 7th item on the agenda, which is the school strategic plan presentation. After our last meeting, we had requested that the school come back this meeting and present some of the DEI work that they were doing and policy change and what might do. So Dr. Dana is here for that.
Thank you very much. And I have with me tonight Mary Wormers, our Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, and Keith DeVerner, our Assistant Superintendent for Personnel and Finance, our high school principal, Adam Federico. We have an assistant principal, Carrie LeBlanc. We have teachers from our school, our students, and school committee chair, Eric Crane. So we want to thank you for this opportunity to come back and provide an overview. We did provide this presentation at Monday night school committee meeting in a chart. There are extra charts right up here. And this is really just the next step in our work to document what we are doing from words to actions. We understand the last month has been very difficult. This last week has been very difficult. And the community piece is really encouraging and being here tonight to be able to work together for the benefit of all of our students and all of the residents for the town of Danvers. The priorities for the Danvers Public Schools, we have had our vision statement for a number of years, and we want our students to become productive, responsible, caring citizens of the global community and achieve their definition of success. Back in August, the school committee approved voted on an anti-racist resolution, and these 6 bullets come from that. So we are creating a welcome community for all, and we want to provide ongoing professional development for all of the adults. We need to continue to recruit and retain a diverse and culturally responsive workforce. A little side note there, although it doesn't show up in the chart at the moment, we are working with the Massachusetts Partnership for Diversity in Education, an organization that has about 40 communities, to support our work with having a diverse and culturally responsive workforce. We will continue to conduct ongoing equity audits of policies, procedures, and programs. Last May and June, we went through 10 policies and updated those, and they became part of our required trainings with all of our staff at the beginning of the school year, and we'll continue to do that. We'll get our handbooks and any of our policies and procedures as we go through the school year in every given year. And we'll include the history of racial oppression and works by authors of color and works by diverse perspectives, from diverse perspectives in our curriculum. And then we want to continue to communicate about issues of racism and hate. And since our last meeting, there have been 3 instances that we have made sure that we did communicate with that school, with the entire Danvers Public School community, and then putting it on our social media so the entire community would have that information also. For our strategic plan, our work involves, and all revolves around having engaged students. Diversity, equity, inclusion is one of the three major pillars. Coherent curriculum instruction is the other, and safe and supportive learning environments. Our priorities here are to provide culturally responsive learning opportunities, build a sense of belonging, establish school environments where all feel valued, heard, and supported, and then we'll continue to implement our professional development. You'll see the theme of professional development is our foundation, but this really is about culture work, working in, as what has been said earlier in today's meeting, of everyone feeling that they are part of our community, that sense of belonging, and that everyone can speak up. And those are lessons that we continue to do with our students. At this time, I'm going to ask Mary Wormus to bring us through some of the journey, and then I'll come back.
Thank you. I'm here to tell you about our journey that we've had with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it started actually prior to the strategic plan. So it started prior to 2018, where we were really looking at our student achievement data. We were disaggregating it to understand how our student groups were doing on our assessments and external assessments. We were finding that we had student groups that were not accessing our curriculum. So when we found that out, we started working on a process called Universal Design for Learning, which is a process that helps us look at a lesson and determine if there are pathways for all students to access it. And if there were not, is that we design the lesson so that all can access it at different points. So we did a lot of that professional learning prior to 2018. But what we found was we were lacking a little bit of the diversity part of the work, and that we really needed to get to look at ourselves as educators and think about some of the practices that we have. So we started in 2018 with the new strategic plan, a 5-year plan that we're currently in. And we were also fortunate to be awarded a grant from the Essex County Learning Community Foundation, and they really helped us deepen our work in 3 areas. So they had 3 main areas that their grant was focused on. One was cultural proficiency, the second was social emotional learning, and then the third was a thing called a multi-tier system of supports for students. So that's a very education technical term, but basically it was helping students get what they need, both in academics, but also social emotionally. So that grant really, we worked with 5 other school districts in the area: Beverly, Gloucester, Rockport, Swampscott, and then Haverhill Public Schools also joined us in all that professional learning that we did. So we infused much of what we learned in that grant. That grant still continues, and we're still members. And as we move through the years, we've infused that into our professional learning. So if you fast forward to June 2020, many of school districts and educators kind of recommitted to diversity work, and we really started doing all our professional learning with an anti-racism, anti-bias lens. So that also happened to be the year of the COVID and coming back hybrid to school and not really being in school full time. So we really understood the social emotional work that needed to be done, but we also infused the diversity and equity work as well. So we had 10 PD days to start the school year. We did a lot of work on implicit bias and thinking about how we created those accessible lessons for people and how it's for our students, and then thinking about how are they going to access either at home, digitally, and in school, socially distanced. So we did a lot of work on that. As that year went on, we were able to take, as administrators, have some professional learning ourselves. A small group of us got to attend an equity institute that was facilitated by Teachers College. It was nice because it was virtual, so we were able to work with them on that institute. That was 3 days. That was my curriculum director team that did that. And then the ADL came in and helped us with some anti-bias training. So those two professional learning opportunities really helped inform us with the work that we now are doing. In the winter of 2021, we put together training for both teachers and then our DHS student athletes. So we did anti-bias training for the DHS student athletes for the late winter season and spring season. So that was led by a team of our Danvers High administrators and athletic director. And then my curriculum director team put together a study group for Danvers educators. We had 75 pre-K to 12 teachers join us in a study group called Striving to Become Anti-Racist Educators. And this was a 15-hour course that they took with us, and we did a lot of researching, reading, doing some identity work. We really, at that time, really understood the importance of knowing more about ourselves before we can understand the identity of others, and work to help in our, understand those identities in our classroom. So that work really went from the winter into the spring and really helped us inform the professional learning that came in the summer and into the school year. So our mandatory training also included lots of these themes, and really we learned by testing it out and trying it out and working with our 75 teachers. They gave us feedback, and we were able to then in turn do that work over the professional development days at the start of school, and now we have what are called the early release days. That every Wednesday we have a 2-hour training with teachers, and we do that work together. Along with that, we now work with students in the same areas. We've been doing more identity work with students, and hopefully parents have seen that, especially at the beginning of the year. A lot of our professional work also focused on building relationships between students and teachers, and between students and students in the classroom. So a lot of that work was done and implemented at the beginning of the school year and continues now. And I think you'll see that our work is happening on 2 levels, one with teachers and moving forward the professional learning, but then also with students. And we look in 2 categories, like the social emotional side of things, but then also in the academic side. So that's kind of how we start to differentiate some of the work we are doing, and that you'll see on that chart. In June, we did book studies that were focused on building relationships and had that anti-racist lens. And this is a quote that really summarizes kind of our shift that we are making in our teaching and learning. So inclusivity in the context of teaching and learning does not simply mean that you are allowed to be present here. To be included means that we have changed ourselves and our practices to make here a place where you can thrive. So this is what we're striving for as we are working through with our teachers, and we will continue to build on that work as we go on for the remaining part of our school year. So our next steps with the school and district community is we have an organization that we work with. It's called the Black Print. They are contracted by the Department of Education, and they are working with us on a culturally responsive practices leadership academy. So we were awarded a grant, or we became one of those school districts back in the spring last year, and we started our work in August this school year. So we have a team of administrators and teachers, and we also have a school committee member on our team with us. That is like our umbrella work. It really is helping us start to think strategically about how we become a culturally responsive school district, and they really are helping us with the equity audit work. They have a tool called the equity planning tool that they've trained us on, and are helping us start to implement that, so that as we move forward to making new programs or making new decisions, that we kind of use that protocol to help us design our programming. So that's our umbrella. As I said, we continue that work with teachers and students, the anti-bias, anti-racist, professional learning. With students, it's culturally responsive literature and civics units that we have. And then they also have the social emotional learning as well. And then with our families, there are committees at the high school and middle school called Culture, Climate, and Transparency Committees. We also have a diversity, equity, and inclusion goal in every school improvement plan. That means the school council at each school that has parents on it and community members are working on those goals at the schools. And then at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Damon to talk about the town.
Thank you, Mary. At the town, looking at our work throughout making the connections with our school department and with the town, we are grateful to the Lappin Foundation and having an intergenerational Holocaust symposium starting in January for 6 sessions. It filled up within about 1 week, and I would like to thank Adam Federico for working with the executive director, Deb, and putting this together and coming up with the idea of having it be intergenerational. Again, those connections between able to hear the voices of our students and being able to work with the adults in our community. We have an equity community study group that I'll talk a little bit more about in another slide, really developing our collective why for our anti-bias and anti-racist work. starting at the elementary level. And then community engagement and communications, we are looking at district community projects and then connecting again with our Human Rights and Inclusion Committee, and would like to expand our work and the work that the town has been doing to learn more and work with the North Shore NAACP. What we have here this evening in this chart, this is really only one visual of putting this together, so we understand that for each of these, there's the pieces where it has our action steps, it has when we're doing this, and what the measures will be, and that we will be sharing in January. So we are grateful for the number of individuals and organizations that came forward. There are many more that are than on here. We really had to look at which ones we were able to develop and move forward with partnerships that had the pieces for working with our students, because we wanted to add more programming. As you've seen with what Mary shared, the foundation of professional development is strong, and we wanted to make sure that this yellow students at the top, that our student programming, that we were adding more opportunities while we can continue to develop as educators within the Danvers Public Schools. I only want to highlight a couple of them that are on here. As Mr. Federico and our students have shared, we have a number of clubs at the high school: Anti-Discrimination Club, PRISM, which used to be, thank you, SUFA, and you can see what that stands for now. Issues to Action Club, which Mr. Federico has spoken about, and working with students to strengthen reporting procedures. Women of the World, our SAD Club, Danvers Care student leaders, our student reps to the Human Rights and Inclusion Committee, ongoing listening sessions that Mr. Federico has put together, and then we have a community block. This is really an infrastructure. This is the first year at Danvers High School, so it's in the beginning stages, but it gives us an opportunity of 25 minutes every day to be able to have time with students in smaller groups, and depending on the topics that need to be discussed together, we have that time. So that is, again, in the beginning stages, but it really is, and it's going to be a wonderful opportunity for Danvers High School, for our students and our teachers to be able to work together. I'd also like to highlight there that that's an amazing example of coming out of the pandemic, where we had teaching looking very different, that the amount of time that was put into this committee to have teachers, have students, and have administrators all working together to come up with a community block and change a high school schedule and be able to implement that for a daily piece at Danvers High School. And then I want to highlight at the end of this column the anti-bias and anti-hazing training for our athletes. We are grateful to Janelle Ridley. She's a member of our community. She has a leadership game design. And what you'll see is many of these opportunities are for about 25 students. So being able to work in smaller groups to really start this moving. So Janelle, Ms. Ridley will start to work with us and our students in January. Dennis Goodwin from the Anti-Hazing Collaborative, that will be, I think, a program with students. That's a one-day type of event there. Northeastern University Center for Sports and Society, Mr. Federico and our athletic director have met with Dan from the Center for Sports and Society, and we will start that program coming up in the new year also. Our MIAA has recently put together an anti-bias training and pledge, and all of our students, again, using that community block. During community block, all of our student athletes will participate in the online training and take the pledge. And then we have continued this fall with the anti-bias training for our student athletes, as Mary spoke about earlier. Just a couple other highlights. Mary talked about our culture, climate, and transparency committees. The middle school also had held a group, also a smaller number of parents at that meeting there. We do hope as we get into January and hold these on a consistent basis that more parents will continue to join us in the conversations. Okay. And then I would like to finish with the community piece. I spoke about the Latin Foundation, but are also grateful to Karen Gross. And she is a Gloucester resident now, but she has worked nationally in Washington around trauma and anti-racism and much work in education. So she will be working with us as a district team with Mary, Keith, and myself as to take a look at what district community types of projects that really work on culture. So we are grateful and look forward to working with her. To share quickly, there is an expense to this, and school committee was very supportive. So we are looking at our program development budget, grants and donations, and the Department of Education has a hate crime prevention grant that is due on December 30th of this year, and we are applying for that. I spoke about the equity at the elementary level, a community learning together. This will be a school committee workshop. It will probably be two-hour workshops coming up in January. We'll be sharing more with that in the community as we come back in 2022. And then we're also looking at, and this is a piece that I'm working with Steve Arthur, our town manager, and the Human Rights and Inclusion Committee as we go into January, are really looking at community engagement and looking at what our current engagement strategies are at the school level, talking about surveys and opportunity with staff and families, follow-up interviews to really assess what are our successes, what are our challenges, and what is the vision for moving forward. And this would be able to produce some strategic messaging, our assets based on the community's priorities. I think that is the end. So thank you for listening. Again, I thank you for the opportunity that we had the opportunity to be able to bring you through almost the past, the present, and the future of our work with diversity, equity, and inclusion for the Danvers Public Schools for our students.
Thank you, Dr. Lena. Thank you. So I will go on and ask committee members if you have any questions or comments.
Thank you so much for doing this so quickly. I know we just talked about it last month, so we really appreciate you presenting it. I think there's a lot going on. I mean, clearly there's a lot of trainings, workshops, work with the students. I think it's great. The big gap, though, that I saw in the slides and the plan itself is how it's going to be measured. It's a lot of, we're putting a lot of things out there to figure out how to solve these challenges, but I didn't see how we're going to know if it worked and how that's going to be a kind of a fluid process. And I know that's what kind of prompted me to ask you to come this month to talk about this, because I wondered, you know, looking at this strategic plan having started in 2018, it's 2021, we're all here because of all the challenges we're experiencing in our town. Looking at that roadmap, it looks like we recommitted to this in 2018, yet from October 2018 to June 2020, I didn't see anything on that map of what we were doing. And so perhaps there was like planning and things going on, but I guess I'm just trying to piece that puzzle together of all of these things are great, but how will we know if it works, and how will we be measuring that?
The measurement piece, as I talked about at the beginning, we'll be being able to share more of that in January and pulling the pieces together. It has been very quick. There are pieces of reacting right now and being able to be proactive in putting it together. We do have our youth versus behavior survey that we have done in the past. We do, it is this year, the opportunity to do that again, and that will give us some data. We submit a great deal of data to the Department of Education. So we do need to take that opportunity to have to pull together those presentations for our community. Had a conversation with our chief this afternoon about the same thing, is that we do have a great amount of data, and through the pandemic and through this fall, we haven't been able to present that to the community. So we will be looking at that. Our middle school started this year. It's called a peer survey. And again, the letters stand for something, but it was really around the social emotional, sense of belonging, and so the middle school is working on that. So we'll continue to take a look at if there are other assessments also that we can look at measurement. And it really, again, some is gonna be the data about how much of the types of incidents that we have, but then we also wanna know from our students, so some of that's gonna be qualitative information also this year.
Sorry, just one more question before you move on. I think the teachers seem to be covered, students, families, community. I didn't see coaches up there though, and I was curious about the coaches training. I did watch the school committee meeting this week, and I think there was a question about, will the coaches go through any, like, how are we changing how we're training coaches? And I think the response was, like, better communication. It seemed vague, so I was curious, will we be implementing additional trainings as we're doing for teachers with the coaching staff and having accountability there, just like we expect of our teachers?
Yes, and there are different parts of the presentation where it says all adults, and that was intentional to, many times, right, we use the word teacher, because we think of teachers doing the professional development. So by saying all adults meaning from, and our school committee is working with us, the administration, our teachers, our paraprofessionals, other staff that we have, our administrative assistants, and I know I'm gonna miss some group, and that includes our coaches. So a number of our coaches are teachers who are receiving this training, but we have other coaches that come in the afternoon and coach. So they are now part of different types of training that we're doing, and it's also part of their training specifically with coaches, and then also MIA has additional pieces now for coaches and athletes. So it's making sure that all adults are receiving, it may be different levels of training, from a classroom experience to a coach or a administrative assistant in our teacher instructional pairs, but everyone is part of that professional development now.
And when will that be rolled out to everyone? Because I think the other.
It's already started.
Okay.
So I guess, and I think that's the
Okay.
difficult piece, is that it's hard to continue to say when or something, it seems like we're reacting and it's happening next. But again, back in 2020, when we had started in hybrid and the Department of Ed said that we would have 10 days of professional development, all teachers participated in that, all adults had different parts to that depending on what their role was within our district. And then we started off this school year, the same piece. We have mandatory required training, some that are required by the Department of Education and some that for a school district we added based on our experiences over the last year, that we added to make sure that every adult knew certain policies that were very important. The policy manual has a lot of information in there, and we picked out the ones at the priority to make sure that we are providing a safe and supportive learning environment for students.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen.
Yes, Bob?
Yeah, it's great to see that the schools are doing all that is humanly possible to rectify matters. I mean, working comprehensively for anti-bias and anti-racist education. And the results hopefully will be, we can have a baseline in just the number of incidents. Should they go down, we're seeing a change. If they stay the same, we'll go up. But that's a good baseline to follow.
Yes, Paul?
Go ahead, Bill.
I have a couple of questions on the anti-racism training for student athletes. You mentioned that Janelle Ridley will be doing this with a group of 25, I believe. How are those 25 chosen? And my next one is, how many total athletes are we going to be dealing with or are in our system? At 25 is 25 out of 200 or whatever.
So we have about 900 students, a little less than 800 this year. So 800 students this year, and in our classrooms and the courses that they're taking, in the community block, there are different opportunities that we're working with all students. Our student athletes, yes, we're going to continue to provide opportunities for them. The intergenerational Holocaust Symposium, we opened up to all students, and we got more than 25 students in a week that are interested in participating in the 6 sessions. So That one is open up to all students,
Oh, okay.
including, so the athletes, but we want to have other students in there also. And then the Northeastern one is part of, for student athletes. Adam, would you like to,
Yeah.
see, Adam's going to be able to add some additional detail for us.
Just to clarify, so all athletes go through anti-bias training.
Okay.
And so, before my tenure, the school made an effort to train all athletes, and then what we did this year was we incorporated it into our program for new athletes, so freshman athletes or athletes that are new to our school. So there's a baseline foundational training that all athletes will go through every year, so that way there's that foundation of training. Some of the programs that Dr. Dana mentioned, working with Ms. Ridley, for example, working with Northeastern, those are more specialized programs that are looking to empower student leaders, almost in like a train-the-trainer model, so that then we have another layer of intervention, another layer of work that can occur as well. So the work with Ms. Ridley is really around developing student voice, and the result of that is that they end up producing game modules that then facilitate conversations, and they can be used in classrooms or with teams. The work with Northeastern is specific coursework that then empowers students to be leaders and conduct activities and serve as leaders in the school. So there's sort of two places that we're trying to work on these issues. One is a foundational level, that everyone gets certain knowledge, certain skills, and then we try to empower leaders, because that's where the culture change is going to happen. When we have student voice and student leaders kind of taking the charge, that's when we're going to see some real change. So I hope that kind of clarifies, more specifically how we're trying to reach the whole population, and then also certain groups.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nico. And before you leave, I'll give it to you, Paul. Speaking of train the trainer, I think, and that's a great idea. I think that's awesome. But I think we also have to think of having policies around captains within our sport teams. And I take the analogy of what's happening now with the band. To be a drum major, they do go through a rigorous training. That's, I think, takes weeks. And we need to find a way to institute that for our athletes, for the captains at least, because yes, it's not just the best player of the team, but it's also the leader. And it's the one that's in the locker room that will be able to bring something out to the coach if things are not going well. So I think thinking of having that train the trainer and make it a requirement to even be considered for captainship, I think could be very helpful. It's not that we forget about anybody else, but these are student leaders, and they have to go through some really rigorous training. Just a thought. Yes, Paul?
I've got a lot of questions here, and some of them have been answered already. But let's go back to the training, the whole concept of the training. What specifically, and I might have missed it, but what are we doing at the elementary level? Because I know we're talking about a lot of focuses on the middle school and the high school. And I remember years ago, and I'm sure this is probably outdated, but I think we had an anti-bullying program, which is called OVEUS or something.
Yes.
Right. So is that still in effect, or have we progressed beyond that aspect? And aside from just bullying, I think we're probably moving in, as I hear Mary talk about anti-racism. So it's key that we start at the elementary level. I'm sure you all agree, number one. And number two, what grade levels would we be starting that at? Because we've got everything's K through 5 in this town. So that's my first question. Where do we start at the elementary school?
Okay. The foundation is set there, the OVEUS Bullying Prevention Program.
That's still in effect, right?
We have had it for about 10 years, so that is part of our work at the elementary school. We also have Open Circle, which is an opportunity where teachers can do some lessons, some role-playing, some really be able to talk about, let's say something happened out at recess, and me to come in and have in that circle, and the Open Circle, it always has an open seat for someone else to join in, and so those two have been our foundation. Over, I would say, Mary, the last 5 years or so, it really has been the work around social emotional learning. And through the pandemic, when we were in the hybrid, we made sure that we had an SEL, again, short for social emotional learning, block during the day. Our math breaks ended up being very beneficial for movement breaks during the day for students also. So again, those three, adding social emotional learning, are the foundation pieces. This year, as Mary said, with working with teachers in that study group, we have had K to 2 and 3 to 5 study groups around culturally responsive read-alouds and a lot of the identity work. So students starting in our preschool, working with teachers and through the 5th grade have done I am poems, identity maps, and that is really the beginning. And then starting to read more books and having our elementary librarian, there's one librarian for our 5 elementary schools. She has been working with our elementary team to have more books that have diverse perspectives in them. The final piece would be the curriculum, and with the curriculum this year we are implementing grades 3 through 5 new civics units, and they are from Primary Source, Mary? Yes. Primary Source, an organization again that has really research-based, and again, when Primary Source meaning from using the documents that are the primary source. So the civics units would be the next piece, and most of them are the 3 through 5, but we have other units that are the K to 2 also. So that sort of gives you the continuum of what is happening at the elementary, and then we'll be working with our school committee in a workshop with our elementary parents starting in January to really take a look at our anti-racist, the work, looking at our curriculum and having those conversations of why it's so important, as you said, Mr. Pollack, that it starts in our elementary schools.
Now, I'm going to move around a little bit on you, so you know, get your sneakers on, all right? I think I might have been on the 2018 strategic plan when we developed that. Time goes by, but so we're basically, this is a 5-year program. We're in the 4th year now, so we're going to come up with another plan after this coming 22-23 year, I believe. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, and it has already evolved.
Right.
So when we talk about a 5-year plan, it's not static. So thinking about 20, 30 years ago, you write a plan and it looks beautiful, and then it sits up on the shelf where we talk about it, but we don't implement all of the pieces. So this is a document that we use all the time. It evolves. So in the middle of this, we have a pandemic. We have hybrid learning. We have 6 months that students are not in school from March of 2020 until September of 2020. Our schools were closed. And then we come back mid-September to hybrid learning, and we start to bring back K1, 2, 3, and not until April do we have, so just about a year before we are able to get all students 5 days a week back into our schools.
Now, the 2018 plan, I think, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but it seemed like it was a little lacking in approaching racism and anti-bias. So we're catching up now, or we have tried to catch up, I believe. So 2018 to 2019 school year, that covered the first year of the strategic plan. Then we come to 2019 and 2020, and we have a problem. That's probably why a lot of us are here tonight. All right, so we're behind the ball a little bit on that one, and now we're trying to catch up. So what I'm trying to get across is that we can teach all these courses, and I'm not even sure they're courses. I think they're plans. I'm not sure what is in the curriculum. And my question is this question. When a child walks into, make it easy, the high school, okay? This is probably too late. But when is that child going to be handed a curriculum that insists that they get this type of training? No ifs, ands, or buts. Doesn't matter what coursework they want to go, where they want to go to school. They have to have this type of training. Are we doing that in civics now? Yes.
We are, and it's
Yeah,
part,
well,
it is
well,
part of
I
our-
know we're doing it in civics. My point is that how long did it take us to do it in civics? So now we're making progress in civics. We do know there's a House and a Senate, and this is the Supreme Court, and we have 3 branches of government, and that's wonderful. But this is the thing, and Lisa, this is not a reflection on you right now. This is a question that I have for everybody in the room. It should be, in my mind, at least mandatory that at some point we're taking, it's not electives, because this is not, this doesn't happen in society. You just can't elect, all right? So I'm saying, if you're gonna do all of this, and I think you're doing it, and I've been part of it myself, but we have to demand and insist that these courses be taught, however we decide they're gonna be taught, period. No ifs, ands, or buts. Nobody walking in saying, my kid's not taking this course. This is a course you have to take. It's civics. Okay, that's it. And this is a course you have to take. This is anti-racism. This is anti-bullying. That's what has to happen, in my mind, humbly in my mind. Okay? Let it go at that. All right, now,
So, but
back,
if I
go ahead,
could
sure.
add the pieces of it, because I feel like we've had one side of the story that's out there. So an opportunity that you shared about curriculum. We do have a curriculum. We could come back in another month and to share with you what we have for curriculum. The Massachusetts State Frameworks, which we follow, has a social studies, the history frameworks. It has about culturally responsive teaching, learning in there. So we continue to do that. Students are taking that. It's not an elective, and we're not only having these
So it's
programs.
required.
Yes, there's a core piece of our pre-K through 12 that has community pieces. I spoke earlier about civics units. We just added new civics units into our 3, 4, and 5 to have primary sources for our students in those grade levels. 6 through 8, what they're reading in their ELA classes, and Mary 8th grade for civics. And then they come to the high school. There is social studies is a requirement all 4 years at Danvers High School. And when they come to 12th grade, one of the opportunities is Project Citizen, an opportunity. So they're learning much more than about local or state or federal government. They are learning how to be, as I spoke about at the beginning, how to be responsible citizens of this global community that we live in now.
Now, you just said something that I want you to clarify for me again. I think you said in their senior year, they have an opportunity to take a course, right? Not a requirement.
That's part of what we do. So there are courses that are required, there are social
Yes.
studies courses that are required, and then there are opportunities. So I gave you one example of an opportunity
Right.
where students, is called Project Citizen.
Right.
Do I have that correct? Okay. Yes, in English elective.
Okay, but what I'm trying to, I know you understand my point, and I know Mary does, and everybody, those that are in the department and et cetera. But when you say social studies, the content of the social studies is what's important. Not just the word, it's like everything else. You've said it yourself, I've seen you say this, that this is just paper. These buildings that we're in, these multi-million-dollar buildings that we're building, just brick and mortar. It's the people in the buildings and the students that have to be addressed, and we all know that, and we all agree on that. So what I'm trying to emphasize is that when we deal with a hard subject like this, and I don't want to get into that critical race theory stuff that's taught to college people, professors and law students, not going that way. But we're in a situation in a society that needs to face things directly and not duck and not, yeah, I hear you stuff and all those other words that make no sense to me, okay? It's direct. It's hard. It's uncomfortable. It's not easy. And it has to be taught because the society, this society that we live on was based on bringing folks here that didn't want to come here, plain and simple. If you don't believe that, you're living in a vacuum somewhere. And I can say that here because I'm on this committee and we face this. So I'm going to change the subject again. Just got that in. Back to the athletes. Let's go to the coaches first. I know the MIAA has a program or programs that allow coaches to become, I'm not sure what the words are, whether they're certified or they have to go through a certain amount of training, probably before they can even coach. Is that correct? Would you know that, Adam, or not?
Yeah, there's different courses and different certifications through like the National Federation. That you
So if I decided to come in and say, okay, I want to come in here and maybe I could be an assistant defensive line coach at the freshman level as a volunteer, okay? I would have to go through some kind of screening.
Yes.
Just
all
can't
our
walk
coaches
in
go
off
through-
the street.
All our coaches go through training.
All right, I would have to be, what is it, the Curry, what's the word? Corey, et cetera. But do I have to go through an MIAA clearance to do that?
The MIA doesn't clear,
In other words, I guess it's
I can't
certified.
speak to what the
I'm looking
MIA
for
does
some
and
sort
doesn't
of
do that. That's
certification.
probably another meeting topic.
Yeah, but here's, what jumped out at me when you said this is that, go ahead, Keith.
So it's the National Federation of State High School Associations, the
Right.
NFHS.
And,
Those
okay,
are the courses that we require our coaches to take. We also, the anti-bias training that we put into place last year for student athletes and coaches, everybody's required to do an online version of that training now.
Okay.
Starting this school year, if they're hired for this year,
Right.
before they're allowed to participate.
because this is where I'm getting at. I heard this, and again, when I say I heard it, I think I saw it on the new president of the MIAA was talking about how they clear coaches. And it came to, I guess it was said that coaches that have been coaching 20 or 30 years, they're exempt from taking these courses or this recertification.
All our coaches have a baseline.
How often?
They do it to get the,
Do they do it once and that's it?
I don't know.
Yeah, I believe at this point, it's once and that's it.
Okay, and
that's
I'm
what
suggesting
MIAA
that it
is
shouldn't be
doing.
once and that's it. I'm suggesting that after 4 or 5 or 6 years, there's gotta be a refresher, because times change. I'll ask you another question. Based on what we were just, what caused this whole situation to come to the fold in the Globe and all the other places, are coaches allowed to even go in locker rooms nowadays?
Yeah.
Can they go into locker rooms, or is it gonna be something that someone's gonna make a complaint that now we've got a situation that's other, all right? Because when I coached, we were in the locker rooms. We had no problems being in the locker rooms. I mean, and you'd be darn sure you could figure out what's going on and what's wrong. You just don't turn around, turn the light off and walk out. Okay, but my point is, what, Adam, I'm asking you now, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but they are allowed to go into the locker rooms.
Yes,
And they can
coaches are expected to supervise any space that
That's
the players
okay, I wanted to hear that, that's what I want to hear, right? So it's not one of those things like it's out of bounds, and you're gonna be looked at as some kind of different person or crazy person if you're hanging around a locker room where you should be. You should be in there, whether it's male or female sports. But again, don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about, because we have coaches that are both female and male, and coach male and female teams. But there has to be some kind of a supervision that would allow for this to never happen. And I'm not so sure that we did a good job of that. That's just me, okay? Last one. How often do the athletes, and I'd like to move it beyond the athletes, but how often do the athletes get I'm gonna say course, but I know it's not the course, but what they had to go through this year, what was the term you used when the kids were taught?
The anti-bias.
Anti-bias, right,
Every athlete completes it, and then it's part of our foundational program for the freshmen. So every ninth grader that comes in, or anybody that's new to Danvers,
Right.
takes that course.
So they-
Everyone
so they
everyone
do-
gets that information.
So they do get that, okay,
And we're expanding it to the entire student body.
There you go, okay, that's, okay, so but they only get it once though, right?
Yes.
Okay, is there any possibility that should be a refresher? Let's say if you come in
I
as
think
a.
it has to change, I think it has to change as we go. I
Yeah.
think that if we stick to a static approach and just say we're doing the same thing every year, then we're not gonna improve ourselves, right?
And that's
So-
basically what's
So
trying to
we
get
have
at.
to adjust. So
That's
we have
what I
to
was
look
trying
at
to
what
get
are
at
the
with
needs of
the
our
coaches.
coaches? What are the trends we're seeing? Things that were important 4 years ago are totally off the map, and now we need to adjust. So I think we have to make sure we have a system in place that says we're gonna train, we're gonna provide kids with experiences annually, that they have a foundation that's there, and then as we work with kids, as we work with our families, we adjust, we change. The moment we stick to the same thing, then we're not gonna do the work we need to do.
You did a better job of expressing it than I could even ask the question, because that's what I was driving at when I was talking about the coaches. Things change.
Of course.
You get something from the MIAA, or you do something, and when they first come in, 5, 6 years later, who knows what's gonna happen, all right? And that's my point with the athletes themselves, because I think that sometime you come in as a freshman, then maybe you need that refresher course as you go into your junior year. maybe, okay? And I think it's something we should think about. And I also am happy to hear you say that you're looking at the whole student body.
Absolutely.
Because it doesn't, it's not, and I know it's not, this is centered around athletics right now to some extent, but we know that it's going on in other areas. It could be other clubs, it could be other activities, it could be non-activities, just the general student population. That's it for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Just a couple of comments. I'm glad to see we've got some organized programs and that we're able to answer some people's questions that were raised last month. I know you're doing a lot of this stuff, but being able to see it and see what we're doing is I think, important for the community. I think one of the points that Paul raised is making sure that each student gets these programs and this training. How do we reach the adults? There's no way we can force the adults to go to these training programs. I mean, I see a lot of the same faces here, and I think that's great that you're interested, and you're not the ones we need to reach. There are a lot of people in this community and in this whole country that are bigots. I mean, we're all bigots to a certain extent. I hate to admit it. We all are. We wouldn't be human. But a lot of us learn to rise above it and be fair with the other people. But there's so many people that need to hear these lessons. How do we reach them? You can't force people to go to training. Any thoughts out of the school? Probably beyond your purview, but this is something we really need to think about.
We are ready to partner with the Human Rights and Inclusion Committee. We are ready to partner with the town, any of the organizations. Our work with Karen Gross is helping us to look at district-wide and having that sense of community and expanding that from the Danvers Public Schools community to the town of Danvers community. We are, again, want to partner with you.
Thank you.
Yes, Paul.
One other part, I apologize, but when the student athletes take the course, or not the course, but help me out, Adam. The training, the anti-bias training, I'm sorry, yes. Do the parents come in with them?
No, that's a student program.
Strictly students, so we're not, see, it's not mandatory, right? Or could they come in?
We have mandatory meetings with parents before each athletic season.
So you do have that,
To
right?
go over procedures, go over expectations, go over resources. And that's something that it's happening right now for the winter season.
For the winter season.
At the school right now.
Does it get into the nitty-gritty of what we're experiencing right now?
The nitty-gritty of
Racism,
no,
anti-bias.
it's not a anti-bias course.
It's just, is it a handbook type thing?
It's an overview of the athletic program, expectations, procedures,
In the handbook,
things that a parent can do to help their student athletes.
okay, in the handbook, is there any mention of anti-racism or bias or anything along those lines?
In the student handbook, in
Yes.
terms of,
Yes,
what do you mean?
anti-racism. What you're actually asking of the athletes right now, and you're proposing to take it into the regular student body, is that already in or not the handbook? Those points that you're trying to make with all these discussions, is it on paper? Is it right there specifically saying you can or you can't do this? This is not-
We have, absolutely, yes, we have clear policies around how you speak to one another, how you treat one another. All those the policies are laid out, consequences, anti-bullying policies.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you very much for the presentation. And I mean, this is a lot of programs, and I'm really happy with doing these. And I think the point that Paul was making there at the end was just that the hope, and I can speak for most of the community, or the committee, I suppose, is we're hoping that these programs, and Mr. Federico said the system, this is like having a system in place. We hope that these programs translate into policies. So it's not something that's one and done. It becomes embedded into what we do, and we just expect it. And we think that that's the only way we're gonna be able to change the culture and make everybody who comes to the school know that these are the policies. It's not just a program that you can opt in and opt out, but these are the policies that are in place that we all have to go through. Thank you very much.
Dave, if I can just add one more comment. I want to apologize to Lisa Dana. I didn't mean to put you on the spot with what was technically a rhetorical question. It's not the school's responsibility to reach the adults, it's ours. And we've all got to work together to do a better job to make sure we are reaching the people of the community and the larger community as well. As I said, I'm glad to see so many familiar faces here again this week, but there's a lot of other people out there that we need to find a way to reach. And I'm just not sure how we do it. If you have any thoughts you can add, that'd be great.
Can I interject? I'm Carrie LeBlanc, I'm the assistant principal of Danvers High, and I'm also Danvers community member. So Dr. Dana last night sent that email out about the swastika and asked parents to respond and have conversations with their children. I know I sat down with my son, my 9-year-old son, who goes to Great Oak, and had a whole conversation about swastikas, what it meant, what it represented, why we don't do that. And you're asking a question that I think is really valid, right? Like, if this cannot just be on our school, this cannot just be on Danvers Public Schools. I took the conversation and the situation that happened at the high school yesterday and applied it to teaching my son. And I'm wondering when that's happening and how often that's happening in Danvers. Because it's not just gonna happen by us doing the work, by us putting into all these programs into the school. So much of it is gonna have to be the parents and having conversations with students. So I just wanted to say that because I feel like I play both roles, and it's important that as a community member that I'm having those conversations.
And I couldn't agree with you more. You actually, that's exactly how I agree with you as well, David. We continue to be deeply concerned with these incidents, and we do not want these to reflect that this is a bad reflection on all of us, and we can't stand by and let that happen. So we have all these great programs that the school is putting together. Policies are getting reviewed and adjusted and changed. But this is like a call to action to the community. For anyone listening out there, you're right. We see the same people come to the meetings. We see the same people. I was troubled when I heard that there were only 7 parents at the HRMS Climate Cultural Subcommittee. Mm-hmm. Where are we as parents in this community? We need to, I have 3 calls for actions for any parents that's listening out there. Number 1, educate yourself. That doesn't mean you're not educated, but about these issues. We all at a different level in matters of anti-Semitism, racism, and any ism you can name. We can always learn more. We can always educate ourselves. Some people are just at the beginning, some people are a little further on in the journey. We have to educate ourselves. We also have to recognize that you have connections to people who don't look like you. If you believe it or not, just thinking that you're comfortable where you are is not the answer. So we have to recognize that even if we don't think we do have connections with different kind of people. And the third thing is we have to teach our children, and you alluded to that. These have to be teaching moments. Kids are going to be kids, as someone said, but that's an opportunity for us. And I don't want to offend anyone. If there's a middle school parent or a high school parent in this town that has not spoken to their kids about the swastika in our school, the anti-racism, then that's the next child that will do something in the bathroom. We can't keep letting that happen. It's the judge, David Mills, usually says he's a triple minority. I'm a triple minority. I'm black, I'm immigrant, and I forget the third one. But I'm just, we cannot keep letting this happen. We have to, the school has to do all this, but this has to be a call to action for our entire community. We have to use these incidents as teaching moment. And if you have not spoken to your kids about it, please do so tonight before they go to school tomorrow. The last thing is, we need to get away from the zero tolerance and have a zero indifference. Passive bystander is no longer an option in this town. We have to show support, and it has to be visible support. It can't just be, well, you know, we talk about it. No, because, believe it or not, very small actions can make a difference. There's a lot of people in this town who don't have any worry, they feel safe all the time, but there's also a lot of people who feel unsafe. There's a student who said earlier, she did not want to be the snitch. There's a lot of people who feel unsafe, and just because you're safe and you're okay doesn't mean the status quo will hold. So we need to find a way to show support, and it has to be visible. I don't know what that looks like. It could be a unity sign in front of your house. It could be a pride flag. It could be something. But we need to start taking action and having that visible support. That's the only way as a community we can. This didn't happen overnight. This committee that I chair was created on May 18, 1993, as a result of an anti-Semitic graffiti in this town. And Mr. David McKenna, who is here, was one of the founders of this committee. We are almost 30 years later, and we had 2 anti-Semitic graffitis in our town in the same week. Kristen, the vice chair, said last meeting, we are raising adults. The only children for 17 years. And the rest of their life, they're adults. So if we think about it, if we are not helping our kids to give them that foundation, that child that is thinking anti-Semitism is fun or not a big deal is the one that would deny a Jewish renter. That's the one, as an adult, from 18 years on, who is going to make bad decisions. Because, so I urge my Danvers fellow brothers and sisters, let's do something. Let's have these conversations. They are not easy, they're uncomfortable, but let's try to do it. That's the only way we will move the needle. Sorry. I didn't have
a May I speak, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
My name is David Mills. I'm a selectman, and I'm not a member of the committee anymore. I am the liaison from the board, and that's why I get to be invited to the meetings. And the last 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, I said, wow, wow, wow. The principal responsibility for what is going on and what is happening, and for all of the reasons that we're here tonight, is what the youngsters learn, not in the school, but outside of the school. And I wanted to just, I felt very bad in the last couple of weeks as the press ripped to shreds the superintendent, chairman of the school committee, who I know and who I have watched carefully with respect to human rights over the last several years. It's irrational and it is unjust to look to the school people, the superintendent and the committee, as the ones who are responsible for what has gone on. In this town, as people have mentioned, we have plenty of homophobia to go around. I know, I'm 79, and I'm gay. It has not been a pleasant place to grow up, the town of Danvers. You mentioned pride flags. Look around. There are 7 or 8 pride flags in a community of 26,000 people. Look around. There is a single Stop Asian Hate flag in the entire town. Look around. I think you will find more symbols of white supremacy being displayed in this town than pride flags. Don't look to the school committee. I know you want. Don't be blaming them for something that has occurred. Feminism, sexism began thousands of years ago and continues in some of the most prestigious institutions of our current culture. Racism in this country is a tragic 400-year pigpen scar, which is still advocated by multiple members of the United States Congress out loud every day on television. We had 14 months ago on the front lawn of this town hall an insurrection in which various town officials and employees took place, where Confederate flags were raised, an ultimate symbol of racism, and white supremacy flags were raised. And no one said anything about it. None of the participants ever apologized to the other 25,000 decent, God-fearing, law-abiding citizens in our town. All I want to say is thank you for putting some emphasis on the place where we have to work the most in order to effect change. And I personally, I have reviewed the work. I just asked Eric, who is responsible for doing this magnificent piece of administrative work? Thank you.
Question, just to follow up with what you said. So for the parents out there that haven't had these conversations before, they don't know how to educate themselves, they don't know where to go, they don't know where to begin. I think as a town, we need to brainstorm and create opportunities to help them. I know a lot of people that maybe up until the summer of 2020 didn't even know how to have conversations about race or anti-Semitism, and it wasn't because they were ignorant or bad people, no one had those conversations with them. So I think we need to partner with the town and as a committee and figure out how can we have trainings or whatever I don't really know what we call it, but for parents that either are needing support with these conversations, they don't know how to do it, or they do and they need to finesse it a little bit. Their kids are older and you have a different conversation with a 5-year-old than you do with a 15-year-old, and they need more support. I think we need to spend some time on this, because to put it on people who haven't been having the conversations, I fear they don't know where to start, and they don't maybe have a network to reach out to. So I don't know, it's an idea for as a committee, maybe we explore it in the coming months.
I mean, I totally agree. Well, not totally agree, but the school sent out notes and PowerPoint presentations that they share with the kids at school. We can start there. The Human Rights and Inclusion Committee has a newsletter, and we have a website with a lot of resources for people out there. That could be the beginning. There's never an appropriate age or a perfect age in my mind, but these are conversations that we have to have somehow. And it's not really, there's no roadmap of this. You sit the child down, you say, okay, this is what racism is. I don't think it works that way. It could be small talk. It could be conversational back and forth. But I just think we need to start somewhere. And yes, we definitely can be more intentional into some of the programs that we present or offer. And we can speak to the town manager about that. And hopefully the DEI position being filled, we could be more intentional into that. But these are conversations to have.
Yes, agreed.
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest something along the same line. If we could put something on a website that people could look at. Some people may not be comfortable going out to a meeting and getting into a conversation, but if they have some resources that we can provide for them so they can read something about, how do I talk to this about my kids? I'll talk about this to my kids. Maybe something like that would be helpful. It'd be a good place to start. Some educational programs would be good, but again, we're gonna see the same 20 people show up at those
True.
educational programs. The people we need to reach aren't gonna come out to them. And that's where we gotta get the message out somehow.
So we're making the call to action.
Mm-hmm.
We're all into it together, people. We can't let a few dictate what our town is. There's a lot of kids in this high school, including my own kid, who don't want to go to college with this on their back. There's a lot of athletes who are doing everything they're supposed to do, and now they're getting penalized because of all this. And that's not fair, that's not okay. So we have to really, there's a majority of kids in our schools who are going to college now with this bad reputation on them, and it has nothing to do with it. I believe it's on us. And that has to start by us, the adult, not just the parent, the school. Everyone, every adult has to put themselves in question and see, are we doing enough? This is not okay. This is not acceptable. I'm sorry. Yes.
Derek.
Bob, and then Eric can comment.
That was later on in the schedule.
Okay.
Um,
And I think
I hope this microphone's working.
Right, this one.
That's okay. Thank you, Dick. We're talking about the schools already, so consider this my liaison update, if you would, Mr. Chairman, because we've had so much discussion about this. So first of all, I want to just say a word to the administration and the high school administration in terms of how they have handled the events of this week. I think and I hope, and by that I'm talking about the swastikas, I'm talking about the public incident involving, that everybody knows about, involving the wrestling team, which has, again, had us on the news. But I think and I hope that our response this week shows that we have listened to the concerns of the community about how other incidents were handled, and we're trying to do a better job of communicating. And I hope that this week at least is an indication of that we are taking steps to be better, as we said we would. I wish that the chance to prove that hadn't happened so quickly, but there it is. But we are trying to become better communicators about these issues. The other thing I want to talk about, just briefly, is that thank you for talking about the fact that this is not just something that can be handled by the schools. Dealing with racism or homophobia or any situation involving hate for someone who's different is going to be the hardest thing that we ever do. And when Lisa talked about it and Mary as our journey, this is a journey without an end point. Someone asked me today, well, when is it going to get to the point where these things aren't happening anymore? And I had to say, I don't know if there'll be a point when they don't happen anymore. The important thing is, can we do what we can to minimize them and react well when they happen and do the right things? Use them as teaching moments, use them for accountability when necessary, and especially support the students who might be impacted when they see the swastika. I'm heartened by the fact that in the instances that have come up, it's been students who have come forward and alerted the administration and the teachers to what they've seen or that there is an issue. And that's big, because it looks like our message is getting across and students aren't afraid to come forward and they care about what's going on. So there are some good things happening. But in my lifetime and in the lifetime of a lot of people in this room, including Mr. Skarmas across the hall there, it's in our lifetime that federal marshals had to escort students into high schools and schools. It's in our lifetime that there was no federal Voting Rights Act until the Johnson administration. This fight has been going on for hundreds of years, and literally, even within our lifetime, there are things that still had to be corrected, and there's always going to be work that will be done. So we appreciate the community support. I hope that you're heartened to see what we're trying to do and what Lisa and her administration are trying to do. We all care about this. The schools care about what we can do for our students. And your comment about the parents and the adults, it really does start there. And I wish that more of the people who needed to really hear the message that we're all talking about today were actually in the room. Because I think that you're here today, the people who have come up today, because you believe in what we're trying to do. You believe in what the town wants to do. You believe in the efforts that are being made, and you want this to be a better place. I wish more of our citizens would take the time to show up and participate. So again, thank you for those who've reached out with support. We're going to keep trying, and we're going to keep trying to do the right things. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Federico. And let's stay at it. This is probably not the last. We're gonna continue to push for more and more, and hopefully, as I said, these really translate into policies, and policies that become part of our culture. So thank you. I'll now move on onto the 8th item on the agenda. Which is the discussion of racism being a public health risk. Bob Gamer.
Yes, I'd like to speak to what both David and Eric were bringing out, that these perpetrators, these student perpetrators, were part of a culture. I mean, it's not going to be something that's going to be solved, certainly not something that's going to be solved overnight. And particularly what David was speaking about, being terrified. That word is important. So I'm going to read this statement. Deluge of racial, homophobic, and anti-Semitic texts sent by DHS students, not one, but 2 swastikas recently posted in clear sight of middle school students. A swastika on the bathroom mirror at the high school a year ago, I believe. Another one found in the bathroom, reported by the principal, Adam Federico, in a letter dated December 15th. A purported police profiling incident involving an Afro-American minister and a 7-year-old daughter who had been picking apples at a local farm. A child reportedly being called the N-word at school without a follow-up. A high school student unfurling a Confederate banner at a DHS parade. Black Lives Matter posters stolen from the front of a church and private residence. We just now have information over a fight Monday at DHS over the hateful, racial, anti-Semitic comments made by members of the wrestling team. Are these isolated incidents? I think not. The evidence, the facts suggest otherwise, that we have a growing and glaring problem here in Danvers. Certainly not a series of incidents that can be simply glossed over. In fact, it is an accurate assessment to conclude that it is open season on hate crimes in our town. As radical problems often call for radical solutions, I therefore would like to make the following motion to this committee: that we have racism, homophobia, and anti-Semitism declared public health hazards in Danvers. Ladies and gentlemen of this committee, if we are going to talk the talk in this committee, we better start getting ready to walk the walk with concrete, decisive actions such as this. Is it any wonder that minority members have legitimate reasons in view of these hateful statements and incidents not to feel safe in our town? Such gross intimidation has not and will not be tolerated in Danvers. I stipulate that continuing to treat this situation with kid gloves will only further exacerbate matters. Again, I am therefore going to make a motion that racism, homophobia, and anti-Semitism be declared public health hazards in Danvers. For our purposes, a public health hazard is anything responsible for or can cause illness, physical injury, or death. Again, you heard the way Mr. Mills was terrified. The underlying hatred that we are seeing expressed in waves by these violators certainly fits this description, this definition. Thank you.
You're making the motion, Bob?
Making a motion.
Second.
Okay, so the motion has been seconded. Any discussions?
I have a question. So, so if we declare it a health hazard, is it to make a statement, or do we want to take additional steps following that declaration?
It's not only a statement, but a message. And yes, we should be taking additional steps, corrective steps. I mean, you heard this, what the schools are doing.
Actually, point of correction, point of order, is that how you say it? I don't think this committee can make such a motion, or can make such a, I don't know. We can't make that decision. We could draft a resolution and for consideration by the select board, because we are an advisory committee to the select board. So we could draft a resolution or a statement and send it to the select board for consideration. Just a point of order. So I don't know if that means we consider the motion or if we just continue with the discussions. But
Just
this committee cannot.
I would be very happy with that. I mean,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
there's nothing that Mr. Gamer has said that I disagree with. I mean, these are facts. But I think the point is that we're not the Board of Health. And so therefore, I think what we should do is follow up on his table the motion for future discussion immediately. But you can't just walk away from it. Somehow, I don't believe you can just come out with you're on the Board of Health.
I am on the Board of Health. I mean, I'm not speaking.
So,
I can't speak for the Board of Health
know-
here, so the chairman
But
has not given me.
I know we have health issues. One of them is COVID-19. But I know exactly where, I think I'm getting I know where you want to go with this, Bob. That's what I'm saying, but I don't think it's up to us to present it at this particular point. I think it needs more discussion. How we would take it as a vehicle and move it forward. I guess, am I making myself clear, right? But again, the motion's been seconded, but now we're in the discussion stage. And I would recommend that we form a subcommittee to follow up and therefore table it at this point, if that's how we would do it under Robert's Rule of Law.
Do we want to table it or just defeat the motion and appoint a committee to do something else?
I don't know what.
Because if we can't pass it anyway, then there's no sense in having that motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think rather than killing the motion, I'd rather see a table for further discussion and figure out what the process should actually be. I think voting no would not be a good message to
No, we
send
don't-
out.
I don't
But
wanna vote no
I
on
think
this.
if we table it and bring it up for future discussion at the next meeting, figure out how we should be actually approaching this. I think the message Bob gives in his very impassioned statement is very clear, and I think I agree with it wholeheartedly. But again, as far as process, who gets to declare it a health hazard, I'm not sure, being an advisory board, that we have the authority, but we can recommend to the selectmen or Board of Health. I think we need to check into what the actual process should be and move it forward. That's my thought.
By health, you also have to include mental health.
Yeah.
I mean, when you are terrified, when you are a person of color or a Latino or a Jew walking the halls of Danvers High School, I mean, we're talking about mental consequences, and I think that's very much related to health, security, fear.
So I would just, I think, let's, with the subcommittee, maybe we look into how we could take it a step further. So
Yeah.
that it's not just, I think that's an important first step, but like what I was getting at is other towns that have declared this, there's an intent. They're looking for funding, they're looking for some sort of, this is a means to an end. And I think that would pass more likely with people like the select board or others than a declaration in and of itself. So I think we could look into how to take it that next step further in that next conversation.
Why don't we come up with a resolution we can offer as a substitute motion?
Why don't we do what?
Come up with a resolution that would be a substitute for this motion. Then you're following parliamentary procedure.
I'm not sure, would that be the procedure though?
Is it,
Well, I would recommend that we table the motion, and for further discussion, and then part of the discussion will be to really, like Kristen said, have a plan. You know, yes, we will have a motion, all of us will have a moral satisfaction that we've passed something, and then what? You know, how do we use that as a vehicle to really address the issue and advance some of the initiatives that we want to advance and
Mr.
make a
Chairman, do you want to
difference?
appoint a subcommittee?
Do we table or do I appoint a subcommittee?
with
So,
table
how do
and then support, I think what I would like to see happen is we table it temporarily, if we can do that within Robert's rules. I got
can.
parliamentarians all over the place.
We
here.
can, we can.
Lawyers coming left and right.
So,
But
Yeah, you can table it generally or table it to a specific date.
could table it to the next,
I'll
next
table
meeting.
it for now, and if there's a need to appoint a subcommittee, I'll do so. And then I'll appoint a subcommittee, and then we will consider, once we have more ground rules and information. Perfect. So. Thank you. So now we move on to the 10th item on the agenda, and please, Dr. Dina, you feel free to, why don't we take a 5 minute recess?
Mr. Chairman, we
Yes.
need to vote to table.
Oh,
That's the
sorry.
procedure.
There we go.
So I move that we table this for discussion at our next meeting.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? None, okay, the motion
Okay.
carries. So take a 5 minute recess, and we'll be back at 8:44. Thank you. apologies. I will call the meeting back to order. I lost track of time here.
So you get some very active people.
So the 10th item on the agenda, these other items, the Black History Month kickoff discussions. Kristen, do you have any? Oh, I'm sorry, I take that back. Item number 9, I skip on you, Paul. The MLK subcommittee update.
We're progressing right now. The main thing is that I think I'm going to have to get in touch with the subcommittee members for a meeting next week. It's vitally important that we get together to get pre-plan the program and the order of events. And I'm getting information from the administration, from Mary and Dr. Dana. They'll be forwarding me the previous programs so that we can start lining things up that way. I'll also be getting in touch with individual members to determine how we are on fundraising results at this point. We've had some come in. I don't know exactly the extent of other members are, what the other members have been able to accomplish. And I'll get an email out to each and every one of you that was responsible for trying to contact a specific potential donor. Okay, so we won't have to talk about that at this point. I can't say that personally, I've got the commitments from Deep and Kiwanis. So we get a little bit going, and I've got about 3 others that are on. We're looking to see if we can get some donations. I think that's about it. Like I said, I will contact you folks. I think there's 3 of us here right now, and Amanda's not here, so we'll get in touch with her. I don't know if we'll do it. I don't think we'll do it on Zoom. I don't know, Dee. I almost want to do it in person, if we can do that.
As of, you mean the meeting, the subcommittee?
Subcommittee,
We
yeah.
can arrange that after.
I think so, yeah.
But the event itself is going to be in person.
Yeah,
Yes.
and people should know this too. It's going to be, you'll have to wear a mask to attend because it's on town property, et cetera. It's at the high school. So, but that shouldn't hinder anybody from being there and having a great time.
And it's going to be on January 17 from 4 to 6 at DHS. And we've been doing this, I think this is going to be the 22nd year, in partner with the Danvers Public Schools. We do have singing groups. We have a lot of art work from our students. They do beautiful work pertaining to the legacy of MLK. And usually after the event, that artwork is displayed at the library for the month of February. But all are welcome. Is free, open to the public. And our committee member, Amanda Sim, is going to have like a mural for the kids to kind of display some artwork there. And they will do that while at the event. So it's going to be kind of interactive. So we urge everyone to come. It's going to be on the 17th of January, 2022, from 4 to 6. And as we display that to the library, the artwork to the library for Black History Month, that leads me to point number 10. Kristen?
So for Black History Month, when we set up the subcommittees earlier this year, Black History Month has myself and Dave McKenna and Pastor Douglas. I don't know, Dave, if you've been in contact with the Danvers Historical Society. I think the plan was to do it in collaboration with them.
I had some initial discussions with them.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I'm going to be out of town the next couple of weeks. But, yeah, we have had some discussions about it. They are interested.
Okay, I think we'll probably want to plan a subcommittee meeting just so we can organize ourselves, so I can help reach out through email and we can connect offline with that.
Okay.
I think some of I was talking with Dee a little bit about what was done in years past. And I know you mentioned the artwork is hung in the library. And, this partnership with the Historical Society, this is my first year participating in the subcommittee, so, I'll lean on you, Dave, for how we do it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, and if you be away, if you leave a contact person from the
Yeah.
Historical Society, then we can connect with them.
Yeah, that's perfect.
I can do that, sure.
Thank you. Then item number 11, so that's to be continued on number 10. 11 Women History Month. Any updates there?
So for the Women's History Month, the subcommittee is Charlie Desmond, myself, Donna, and Jorge. And then we have Eileen helping to coordinate. The planning is scheduled to begin this month. We haven't yet met. So we should probably, now it's practically the holidays, so we should probably get something on the books for early January. So I can coordinate with Eileen to get that scheduled, Jorge. We had talked about in the subcommittee meeting or the event planning, a speaker series. I don't know if there's been any further thoughts. I don't think we had identified anyone or any planning had begun. So we'll want to figure that out. And then, again, I spoke with Dee a little bit because this will be my first Women's History Month. And there's been different ways we've done it in the past. We have the website from last year where we had a number of local women highlighted as well as women in history. And then the White Ribbon event, maybe you
White
could.
Ribbon Day, yeah. I think a few years back we had a White Ribbon Day event right here at the town hall. And I think it's somewhere in March. I'll double check, but those are things that we can consider. And please, for community members out there, if there are events, if there are initiatives that you think, let's remember that visible support. This is what it's all about. We have to all do this together. So if there are event initiatives that you think could help us move the needle, you're more than welcome to let us know, and we'll definitely pursue those opportunities. We are a bunch of volunteers, so we just can't do it alone. So we really look out to all of you to help us achieve these objectives and goals. So that's going to be continued. And so we'll now go on to our liaison updates. Item number 12, the select board update. The Honorable David Mills.
Nothing too specific, Mr. Chair. The board just continues to unanimously applaud and thank this committee for an enormous amount of work and attention. Even David McKenna and I are surprised at what's happened after 30 years. So that's all it is. It's applause from the board and no specific items. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And thank you for the board's support as well. We had brought forward to the board during the last meeting a proclamation, and it passed unanimously. They were very receptive. And if we don't mind, I'll ask to Christine to please read the final version of that proclamation.
Sure. So we, the Select Board of the Town of Danvers, Massachusetts, by virtue of the authority vested in us by the people of Danvers, as elected officials, do hereby proclaim Thursday, January 27th, 2022, as International Holocaust Remembrance Day, and recognize the month of January as Holocaust Education Month in the town of Danvers. Whereas Thursday, January 27th, 2022, is International Holocaust Remembrance Day and marks the 77th anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz death camp. And whereas honoring the victims and survivors begins with our renewed recognition of the value and dignity of each person, it demands from us the courage to protect the persecuted and speak out against bigotry and hatred. And whereas on this anniversary, we recommit ourselves to combating the global rise in anti-Semitism. And whereas recent acts of hate in Danvers serve as a painful reminder of our obligation to condemn and combat rising anti-Semitism in all its forms, including the denial or trivialization of the Holocaust, and whereas this anniversary is an opportunity to reflect on the progress we have made confronting this terrible chapter in human history and on our continuing efforts to end genocide, and whereas the definition of anti-Semitism reads as follows: anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred towards Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed toward Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and or their property, toward Jewish community institutions and religious facilities. Now, therefore, may it be resolved that the town of Danvers hereby recognizes January 27th, 2022 as International Holocaust Remembrance Day and the month of January as Holocaust Education Month.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And we are hopeful that as these proclamations get passed, we actually have events in these days or these months that people will get sick of me using the word visible support. We can no longer be, it's a zero indifference. We have to be active bystanders. So thank you.
I just have a question on this. So we did this for 2022, but feedback from a citizen was, why can we not have this as a standing event every year? And when we're recommitting ourselves, how can we ensure that, if this doesn't fall off of the radar of, administratively, how can we make sure that we do this each year? Yeah.
We just have to do it now. We have here as January 27, 2022. We could have just left January 27, but I think it's important every year to bring that proclamation back and just follow it up with some action. So I think by bringing it back on a yearly basis, it's not just put in a drawer somewhere and then, so it's important because the nature of the text can also change from year to year, right? So by committing ourselves on a yearly basis, I think will be better. We just have to be able to do it. So this will not be a one and done.
Did you mention January 27th?
Yes.
That's the national
That's correct.
commemoration?
That's correct. International Holocaust Remembrance Day.
We should do that every year at that time. But
That's right.
We have to, historically, we haven't met in January. But, so we have to get it to the select board no later than December.
That is correct.
Which we had no problem doing it this year.
That's correct.
Just have to keep it in mind for next year as an event.
I think the feedback was, why wouldn't the select board, if they're committed to this, why wouldn't they automatically do this? Why, as the Human Rights and Inclusion Committee, should we have to bring it each year? Why wouldn't they prioritize this and have this? But is it just anytime there's a proclamation, it's required that someone bring it to the select board? Or can they automatically, I think it's, if we're committed to this, can this be standing for the select board each year? I don't know.
We do have a select board liaison, and that's something we can task him.
Yeah, I'm just making a note now. I could speak with the chair and ask him the question, is there a way of this just being automatically revoted each year? So
unless we change the language.
I will do that. And I will report back to this committee.
Thank you very much. So the next item on the agenda will be the Interfaith Partnership Liaison Update, Pastor Doug Lavoie. And before he gives his update, I just want to give you a big thank for the visual. I'm sure you're probably going to update us on that. It was amazing, the speed with which you were able to get different faith leaders to come together for that evening. It was great. It was needed, and I just wanted to say thank you for taking the lead on that.
Yeah, and so just to add a little bit to that, that certainly just gives the indication, hopefully, to everyone in the community that the clergy of Danvers is present in this time as these events unfold within the community today and as the future moves forward. The Danvers Interfaith Partnership has not met recently, And so I don't have a specific report back to them, but I did want to comment on that evening, and I thought that that evening was just very touching. I was very pleased with, like you were just saying, those that showed up and were present to it in leadership, but also the community that showed up. And I think it was necessary in that time and space to be able to come together and to be together in that time. But I think moving forward, also to realize that we are a community that needs one another. And so I think it was just a very memorable evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We did already hear about the school, so I will now move on to our police liaison update. Lieutenant Ralph Sullivan.
Thanks, Dee. I didn't have anything together for this month beyond what the chief had presented at the top of the meeting. But I did just want to mention, Lisa Silva commented at the beginning of the meeting in the community section how it can be difficult to get up at the podium and talk in front of groups of people. I often hear that it's difficult for people who don't know police officers to come up and approach us and talk to us and ask us questions. So I just wanted to offer to any of the community members, all these folks are very comfortable asking me just about anything. But if you don't know me or anybody at the police station, I'm here after the meeting. If you have any questions about us at all, please don't hesitate.
Thank you.
Yes? I have a question for you.
Me, yes.
Just a follow-up. The 2 meetings ago, you mentioned that we're in the process of hiring 3 new officers? I think you said 3.
Yeah, 5. I believe we were attempting to hire 5.
5?
Yes.
Okay. How's that, where are we in the progress?
So they have finished most of their, they finished all of their interview processes with their background investigators. They have finished their interview process with the chief and town manager. And they went on to their medical, psychological examinations, drug testing. They now have to take 2 different physical ability tests, one for civil service and one specifically for the academies. And they have finished, I want to say the last physical fitness exam was last week. So we are waiting to hear back the results from those. So we did offer, make conditional offers of employment, which means they have to pass all the rest of the things. And if all of that is done and said, we hopefully will have 5 people in a police academy starting in January.
You're looking to hire 5. Do you have a pool greater than 5?
Yes. So when we ask for names from civil service, civil service controls how many names. So for every vacant position, civil service has a formula that gives you so many names. And if it's one position, I think they might give you 2 or 3 names for that position. So we had a much larger pool that we had to work with to get down to those 5. And starting with like the larger pool, we would get the names, but then those people then have to go to town hall and sign a card saying that they're willing to take the police job here if offered to them and they want to partake in the process. So that might be a smaller group than when we started with, and then those folks have to go through the background investigation process, which may turn into an even smaller group. Some people, there were a couple folks that would have made great candidates or applicants or officers, but they didn't have the residency requirement. They didn't live here for the appropriate time that civil service requires them to live in Danvers at the appropriate timeline, so they may have had to apply with a different police department. So as we go forward, some of that larger pool gets whittled down to a number of people that ultimately the chief of police and town manager make the determination who of those 5 will make the conditional offers employment to. And like I said, once that happens, they then have to go through medical, psychological, 2 physical ability testings, and if they don't pass any of those, we're not able to hire them.
If I hear you correctly now, you're at 5 though, is that
Correct, yes.
So you're down to 5, the 5 that you potentially want. Correct.
And I have a question, and you may be able to answer or not. The first one is, actually two questions. Among the five, is this something you can discuss? Is it a diverse pool, or is it all white males?
No, so the five are not all white males. The five include white males, but also include a Hispanic or Latina female, as well as a white female.
Thank you. And then the second question I have is, I think the town, and this may be a touchy thing, maybe you can or cannot answer, the town of Swampscott got rid of the civil service requirement. Do we know how they did that, or is this something that have come up for discussions in our town?
Above my pay, yeah.
Okay. I respect that.
I can tell you this.
That would be
I
definitely
stand
chief
corrected.
of
Town meeting rejected it about 3 or 4 years, 3 years ago.
Longer than that, I believe.
Is it a town meeting decision? Is that how Swampscott did it?
I think it went through select board, FinCom, and then town meeting.
Yeah. Just food for thought.
Yeah.
I have a
we
question,
tried.
Rob. Can you remind me, are we hiring 5 new officers, or are we backfilling positions of people who retired?
So they are not additional positions, they are positions that we are currently down.
Okay, thank you.
Some of it was from 2008, 9, I think, wasn't it? Wasn't there one that hadn't been filled from that far
Yeah,
back?
it's not a very quick process. Civil service is now moving to the exams they were given every 2 years. I just heard the other day that I guess civil service will be offering police and fire entrance exams yearly now to get more people to apply. And I will say that this year you can check out if you go to, I can't comment on specific applicants or who they are. If you go to mass.gov and search civil service and plug in the town of Danvers, you can see all of the people on all of the lists. You can see my name. Like when I went through the process to become a sergeant and I became a lieutenant, you can see where I fall with my coworkers amongst my ranking on the civil service list. So anybody can see those at any time. But there was, not just in Danvers, but statewide, an enormous decrease in the amount of people who are applying for police jobs.
That was my next question. Yeah.
Thank you.
Tough positions to fill at this point.
They are. I believe we may have only had, the way the lists work is the top people that go to number 1 automatically are disabled veterans, then there are veterans, then they are family members of police officers who were killed in line of duty, and then there are Danvers residents. And I want to say, and then everyone else who took the exam who's not a Danvers resident, I want to say there may have only been 30 or something Danvers residents that passed the civil service exam that were potentially looking to come work for us.
So, sorry.
That's fine.
We don't get many chances.
That's okay.
And
We are still in schedule.
so if we, if you needed, let's just hypothetical, if you needed 5 officers that you want to replace, and you did not have 5 officers within residence, then you can't replace them, can you? Or can you have, do you have the opportunity to go outside if the pool is so small and then exclude the residency requirement?
Yes, so we still have residents, so if we end up, if we, say there's a scenario where those 5 people, something happens with one of they didn't pass, they have a heart condition or something, and they couldn't pass their medical exam, we wouldn't be able to hire them. So we would have to call for more names. We would say we have 1 more position open. Or if in that time frame, more people retire, or they transfer to different departments, we might have 2, 3, or 4 more vacancies. So what we would do is we would have to go back to civil service, and we would say, we have this many spots, give us more names. And we would start the entire process all over again. Those new spots would go to anybody that still remained on the active civil service list who are Danvers residents or veterans. And then if we work through all of the Danvers residents, and then would go to whoever the top scorer was who wasn't a Danvers resident. And you would work down that way. But that could be someone from anywhere across the state. So just because they were the top scorer that's a non-Danvers resident. They might be from the western part of the state. It doesn't necessarily mean they're willing to move here and come work for us. So we would have to send out that same card where you come here and sign saying, I'll apply for the job and go through the process.
Once you accept the position, are you required to live in town or not?
No, so civil service law requires us to live within, I want to say it's 11 or 12 miles. We have this weird bubble map because it's 11 or 12 miles from any border of Danvers, and it is any community that falls within that border. So even though your house may be like Ipswich, there's a lot of real estate in Ipswich and Gloucester. Your house may be 11 miles away, like further than 11 miles from Danvers, but as long as the two borders of the two communities hit, we're required to live inside that bubble.
Thank you.
Thank you. Last item on the agenda, any new business? None. I would just like to urge the community again and let everyone know that the DEI position, we're still taking up applicants. I spoke to the town manager. He's got a hiring committee together that includes myself and Abu Tobin who is the DEI director in Beverly, and a few other people. We'll be looking at the applications sometimes next week, I believe. There's a very small pool of candidates, so please continue to pass the word out there. He indicated that the position will stay open until it's filled. And hearing from a lot of residents and him, it's important to fill it with the right person, not just to fill it, but because this person will really be needed and will be coming on board and have a lot on their plate to help us navigate all that we have to do. So the application, the hiring process is still ongoing, and I'm hoping that we get more qualified applicants and that we have someone on board for next year. That's the last update. Anything else? Okay, so I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Danvers. Good night.